Brexit was a diversion, really, I suppose, from something. I think now that Brexit has been sort of compartmentalised, it's coming back, those basic discontents, and we will see that presumably with votes for the Reform Party or whatever.
Now, we've just been talking about how across Europe, populist, and obviously there's lots of different terms here, populist, hard right, far right, anti-EU groups seem to be on the up, in part fuelled by farmer protests. We just heard from Bruno Waterfield, the very noisy farmer protests which are taking place in Brussels right now. What does all these actually mean in broader geopolitical terms? Is there actually something going on, or is it just some unhappy farmers in lots of different places? The Times' diplomatic editor Roger Boys is here. What do you think is going on here, Roger? Is this a thing?
Well, first of all, I'm also impressed by Bruno Waterfield. My goodness. No, it's well, there's a process going on, isn't there? There's a loss of faith in centrist politics, which is quite broad and is not confined to the EU, but is amplified in the EU because of different tensions, different domestic tensions. So, and sometimes it's resolved by a change of government, like in Poland, and like in Spain recently, but not quite resolved. And sometimes the far right wins, as it did in Holland, but still can't produce a competent government under Wilders. So it's and Macron is, as usual, looking into the middle distance and wondering if Le Pen is going to be his big problem when it comes to the presidential election in next year. So it's there are all sorts of calculations going on, but they do the basic discontent probably began with COVID and the denial of public space, public political space, or the focusing just on anti-lockdown, pro-lockdown kind of protests. And then it's moved, it's kind of progressed, and suddenly we've seen a whole coalition of protests going on. So you've got the net zero protesters, and in Germany, this discontent and some of the far-right drift came from something as banal as heat pumps. So the German government wanted to make conversion to heat pumps compulsory, and that would entail even some people selling their houses because of the sheer cost of the whole thing. So there was close to an uprising about that. But then that fizzled down. The centrist government worked out a way of perhaps repackaging it. But each step seems like a step too far. So you have those green policies, and you have the farmers' discontents, and you have immigration, which, and as far as most of these countries are concerned, that problem has been around since 2015 when all the Syrians came over. And it's not just an immigration problem, but an integration problem, what to do with all these people and how to convert them into loyal citizens, and also not put immense pressure on the infrastructure, the health infrastructure, the school infrastructure, and jobs. So all these things have coalesced around what I still call far-right parties, but we could call them hard-right, because the centre-right doesn't seem to address them properly. So
does it make a difference that in a lot of these? I mean, I suppose in the UK this is the case where they are centre-right parties in power. Are they more susceptible, or is it? Well, I suppose actually, or is it centre-left parties are more susceptible to these problems, or is it just whoever's in government at the moment?
Well, there's two things. First of all, there's the timetable. So European Union has European elections in June, and it has lots of regional elections, like in Germany in September. So all these affect your positioning, and Britain doesn't. Is not in that framework. I mean, it feels like it's in a pre-election period, but it's more complex than that. So that's one thing. The other is the economic cycle and the cost of living crisis, which is fed then into everything. So you get different groups within society who feel more deprived than others. And these feed in then to the insurgent spirit that you're getting. And there's a countryside versus city tension, which is also feeding into the popular uprising. And you can see that all these demonstrations, including Bruno's dramatic one, they happen in cities. And it's people, first of all, because you can paralyze a city with tractors, and you can lay siege to cities like currently in Paris, by blocking roads and throwing manure on the streets. But on the whole, these farmers don't have much of a direct electoral impact. They're not. They're just natural insurgents who quite often are getting quite much wealthier than they pretend.
In part from the subsidies that come from the EU, which they are supposedly protesting about.
Good old EU. Yeah.
Just finally, then, have we avoided this happening in the UK because we had Brexit? Was Brexit the sort of the release valve, if you like, albeit preceding COVID, but that sort of stop telling me what to do, taking back control and all of that? Did Brexit have that release valve? So we haven't seen actually, reform going from 10 to 13% in the polls. I'm not saying they're far right, but they're more to the right of the Conservatives. We haven't seen that insurgency in the other European countries, I say.
Well, I mean, Brexit was a diversion, really, I suppose, from something. I think now that Brexit has been sort of compartmentalized, it's coming back, those basic discontents, and we will see that presumably with votes for the Reform Party or whatever. They're this kind of swirling electorate of and swirling support 22%. It's interesting that quite often these figures, opinion polls, for example, that you get for Richard Tice's party, match almost precisely what's going on with the Alternative for Deutschland. It's a different system, it's different things at stake, but it's there. It's a solid stable 20%, so you wonder, do we share the same fears or do these 20% share those fears across the continent? And could be.
And I suppose it's only if other parties either address them or face them down as to whether or not they go up or down, presumably in the polls. Rod, it's really good to see you. Roger Boyce, diplomat of the Times.